Yeah, there's several questions that have come in here at the end that I'm about 10 minutes behind, so I've got all to them. The most recent one I was about to answer was, can you use simplified free file that is filing on MyTax Illinois, even if you file paper return with the IRS? Yes, you can. It's not whether you filed paper return with the IRS, it's just whether you filed in 2021 with the Illinois Department of Revenue and have a more simplified version of a return to file with us. Does it matter if you file the tax year with Illinois ahead of the filing the same year with the IRS? We highly recommend that you do not do that, simply because if something changes on the federal form, it will almost always affect the Illinois tax return. So though you can technically do that, the Department of Revenue does not recommend you do that, because amending a return always takes a lot longer than getting it right the first time. We've got several other questions in here that I can just read out loud and see if I can answer them on the fly. Can we use a MyTax account as a CPA to contact Department of Revenue for an elderly client who doesn't have access to a computer to have their own account set up? An individual would have to set up their own master logon first and then allow third-party access. If you have clients that you want to help them set up their master logon, that's perfectly fine, as long as they're sort of aware of what you're doing and then grant the third-party access, that would be fine. If you want to give us a call while you're doing that for help, we'd be happy to work with you. Just make sure you've got a power of attorney on file or the client there with you when you call. I got a question. Why can't a tax preparer send in information on behalf of a client without going to the MyTax account for the client? It's kind of the same question, and you can always send responses through the mail, so there's no hard requirement to respond through MyTax. But MyTax, we will receive it pretty much immediately, so it's a lot faster. And again, you could do this, but an accountant would have to first have third-party access to their client's tax account, which would mean that the client would have to set up their own individual income tax account, or profile rather, first. We do get this question a lot with electronic signatures on powers of attorney. Dan, I'm not for certain off the top of my head. I'll let somebody jump in with this. I was aware that I believe it was Illinois is one of the few states that does not allow electronic signatures on powers of attorney, but I'll let you correct me if I'm wrong there.
No, I believe as of my last understanding, we didn't allow electronic signatures, but I would, that's always something that could change based on regulations. So if that changed, we would put the information out on our website.
Okay. Thank you for that one. I got another question about using MyTax to contact IDOR for clients. Again, you can help your client set up their MyTax logon. If they allow you to do that, that's perfectly fine. But they do have to have a logon set up to give you third-party access in order to respond. Let's see. He's got a question. Is Illinois accepting the increased $300 teacher deduction allowed by the IRS, or are we staying with $250? I think this is the 250 is maybe thinking of the materials credit, which is allowed on the Illinois 1299C. That's limited to 250, but that's not a deduction. That's actually a credit. And so there may be a federal deduction. If that's in the adjusted gross income, we do not require that as an add back. So you should already be getting any deductions that are in your adjusted gross income. Another question about accountants that have clients on which the client wants to allow third-party access and the system is complicated. It's complicated in that it does require two steps, yes. Can we come up with another way to verify third-party access in a way that's easier for both? Again, I'll let Dan come in on this since he does the MyTax stuff, but I do not think that's going to be possible. It's not been anything that we've discussed. I know that the Department of Employment Security has service bureaus that they kind of allow this. I have not heard anything about the Illinois Department of Revenue trying to do anything like IDES does for service bureaus. And we've got to be a little bit more careful when it comes to individual income taxes, just because of the potential for abuse. So we always want to make sure that the taxpayer, the individual taxpayer, setting up their own MyTax account, or at least authorizing someone else to set it up for them if they don't have a computer. Will IDOR allow PDF attachments of real estate tax bills to the ICR to cut down the number of notices issued disputing the real estate tax credit claim? This would be another good MyTax question for 2022. I know for previous years we did allow attachments on MyTax. Are we going to allow that for 2022? And as far as through MEF, I'm curious if MEF will allow that. No attachments. I just got a notice, no attachments for the MyTax. See, Dan, do you know about MEF?
No, I'm not aware specifically on that on MEF, but that would be a question we can certainly ask that department. But ultimately, any of those changes would come through there since that's who handles it. So.
I've had and maybe this would be a good question for Whitney. I've had a few people say that they can't see all of the questions that are being asked in the Q&A. Should all participants, all attendees, have access to the Q&A questions and answers? At least every question I've answered, I have answered publicly and not privately. So I imagine they should be available to everyone. I know that if you're using WebEx, it starts with the Q&A panel minimized, and you may have to pop it out to be able to see how many are asked. But we got a good amount of questions in here.
That is correct. So there are icons at the bottom of your screen. So if you don't have that Q&A panel popped up, you might not be able to see all of the questions being asked. And then there is a scroll bar. There are several questions out there. I believe, gosh, 100. So love the participation, and hopefully we're getting everything answered. But you'll want to scroll up and down to see everything as well.
Yeah, and for copy and pasting, you should just be able to right-click your mouse and copy. So anything that if any attendees find anything useful, go ahead and copy paste anything you want right out of here. I've got several questions about are the rebates taxable? No, the rebates are not going to be taxable in Illinois. We cannot answer whether or not the IRS is going to require them to be included in the federal adjusted gross income, but if the IRS does include them in the adjusted gross income, they can be subtracted on line 6 of the IELTS import. And also, they should not be affecting in any way the property tax credit. Property tax credit, it doesn't matter if you received a property tax rebate. A question about if somebody collects more sales tax than what's due, how do they account for this in the ST1? Well, there could be a lot going into that. So in general, if you collect more than what is due from a taxpayer and you collect excess tax, there is a line on the ST1, I believe it's line 22, excess tax collected, where you would report that. But there could be a whole bunch of other situations going in there. So if you got anything specific that you got to notice on or concern about, feel free to give us a call on that notice. So CPEs are not being, that's, I think everybody's asking about continuing education. I think we've confirmed that that is not a current thing that we allow. Is that correct, Whitney? At least for this panel.
Sure. That's something we can look into. We don't have the qualification to issue it ourselves. We'd need to go through an entity or establish our ability to issue CPEs. So something we can look into, but at this time, we're not able to issue any CPEs for this presentation.
Okay. Just got sort of a general questions about a taxpayer who had issues with tax paid to in other states. Yeah, we still allow credits for tax paid to other states as long as they're non-reciprocal states. Any specific issues, again, you get a notice or something for a client, feel free to give us a contact if it's not clear what we're looking for. Okay. Got another question on IRS increase of $250 to $300 for teacher credit. Yeah, so again, if it's in the adjusted gross income, if there's a deduction in the adjusted gross income, we're not going to require an add back. But if there is an actual federal credit, that's going to be different from any Illinois credits. So there's no, though we may allow a credit on a similar thing, I'm not familiar with a federal teacher credit on the federal return because it wouldn't be anything that directly affects an IL 1040. If it is an actual credit and not a deduction, then that if the IRS is increasing it, I've not heard that our 1299C is going to be increasing. No, I haven't. I was not looking through the updates so much as I was answering questions the whole time. So I don't think we've got a year-end update on increases to 1299C credits. At least not for that teacher materials credit. 100% bonus depreciation. 100% bonus depreciation, we've always coupled with federal 100% bonus depreciation. Do we know, does anybody have any information about what is going to be allowed for years after 2021 with federal bonus depreciation?
Peter, we decoupled actually last year. With the let's see if I can remember the Tax Act real quick. It's Public Act 102-16. We decoupled from that as of 2021. With that 100%, it scales down to 100%, 80, 60, 40, and 20. And our forms are going to have to adjust to that next year. That's why that 80% is coming on onto our form. Is that?
Yeah, I think
that answers the question, right?
Yeah, this is a question at 11:22 a.m. Just confirm that 100% bonus depreciation is not allowed for Illinois.
No, it is not. No longer.
Okay, thank you, Craig.
No worries.
Just kind of looking through here, see if we got any others. Is there a list of maintained dividends which qualify for the dividend subtraction on the 1299C? I do believe, just off the top of my head, that should be. All of the 1299C stuff and the schedule 1299I has all of the information. There are a bunch of various credits. And there's also subtractions on there. So let's see. Looks like we've got as far as subtractions go, we only have the River Edge redevelopment zone dividend subtraction and the high impact business within a foreign trade zone dividend subtraction. Those are the only two subtractions on the 1299C. Just got a general question. Are we expecting that the call wait time on IDOR while on the phone is going to be reduced? Say we've got in December, our call times are down. I mean, Brock can speak to that, but
yeah, our call times are down significantly this month. I know Monday it was roughly a 14-minute wait on average for the day. But last week we were down to, it was under 2 minutes as far as the wait time. And some advice as far as calling our taxpayer assistance line. Monday tends to be the busiest day. People have questions that come up over the weekend. They'll call us on Mondays. So I would avoid Mondays. And of course, lunch hours, part of our staff is away during lunch hours. So if you avoid lunch hours, you're more likely to have a shorter wait time as well. But right now, our staff is doing an excellent job of addressing taxpayer questions. I know a couple of weeks ago, we had one day where the average wait time was like 12 seconds. So, we're in really good shape. Please continue to call us. And there are going to be days with long waits, especially during tax season. We're doing the best we can, but we want to provide the best service possible. And I think we're in a great spot right now.
All right, thank you, Brock. Just kind of looking through. Looks like that's most of the questions here. There's just one more that popped up here. What's the penalty if an S Corp did not make estimated payments for pass-through entity but claims it for 2022? I imagine that's going to work the same as the estimated payment penalty would for the, at least for the, we've already got programmed for I-1120s. Craig, if you got any additional information on that.
You're correct, Peter.
Okay.
It's based off the 2220.
And just see one really quick one. We've got clients that work in Missouri 100% of the time, live in Illinois, and their employer withholds Illinois withholding on 0 Illinois wages, and all the wages are listed on the W-2 as Missouri wages. Illinois rejects the taxes for giving a credit paid to another state. It's difficult to rectify. Is there a better way to straighten this out? I will say this is a thing that we do tend to always ask for physical paper verification of the W-2. As long as the W-2 is filled out correctly by the employer, that is showing that box 15 Illinois, box 16 wages for Illinois is 0, and box 17 withholding for Illinois is whatever that amount is, then we should both allow the withholding and credit for taxes paid to the other state. But we cannot confirm that that's always the way that it's going to be. So it really does depend on what the physical W-2 looks like. And if the W-2 is incorrect and says that the wages were earned in Illinois, that will cause a problem every time, because we have to take that as being earned in Illinois if it shows that in box 16 next to the Illinois. I see a collection. If we send something to a collection agency, can we transfer it back to Illinois Department of Revenue? I don't think we've got any collectors who can speak to that on here. In my experience, I haven't seen that we do that very regularly, but I got a question. Will the pass-through entity thing be waived for 2022? We waived it for 2021 year ends. 2022, we will not automatically waive it. But if someone has someone receives a notice where they've got a penalty and they have a reasonable cause to ask for that penalty to be waived, be more than welcome to respond to that notice requesting that. Yeah, a general question, just someone sort of asking, just expand on the e-filing of amended returns for individual income taxes. I don't know what more we can say through the filing electronically that hasn't already been said. I know that it's going to be, it is currently. I was mistaken in one of the questions I'd answered. I'd said that it wasn't available yet. It is for certain programs, for certain years. We're trying to expand that into more, but I don't have much direct MEF information. I don't know if somebody else can jump in there.
No, Peter, I think the main thing was previously it wasn't always allowed, for to send in amended, and it required a paper return, whereas now through those third-party software, it can be amended electronically. You were able to previously file an amended return through MyTax as long as you electronically filed otherwise, but this expands it to the MEF programming.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Can somebody have more than one CPP, one for different tax liabilities is a question? Sure, usually collections will consolidate all liabilities under the same taxpayer. But so, depending on when they come into collections, they may not always consolidate it. We don't have anyone on our panelists right now that are directly from collections, so I don't want to speak too much onto that. Okay. Well, there's still a bunch of questions which have been coming in to the Q&A. How much time do we have? We have until 12 o'clock?
Yeah, we have until 12, and I see some of these questions are related specifically to processing or some to collections. And when I give my closing remarks, I'll address this again, but we are going to do these events quarterly. So one of these events will be hosted by our Collections Bureau. The next presentation will actually be hosted by our Account Processing Administration, so they can go into more detail on the processing and the collections questions. Also, still up on your screen, you should see the contact information. So take a screenshot or write it down. But as you continue to have more questions, we're going to be shutting this down here shortly. You can send your questions to those email addresses or call us at those phone numbers, and we will address those. The email addresses, typically we respond to those relatively quickly. Most of the time it's same day, depending on the volume that comes in on a given day. So please continue to reach out to us via those methods as well. But Peter, let's go ahead and do a couple more questions, then we'll give our closing remarks and shut down for the day.
Okay. Well, next one I see here is, why is a letter from a tax preparer that's preparing a return not good enough on how the return was prepared? This is on how a W-2 is changed from the original due to a move in or move out of the state. Well, so a W-2 is a legal document. So if a W-2 is prepared by an employer and they have prepared that W-2 incorrectly, then the employer is the one who has to provide the letter. Unless the preparer themselves is the employer for the client, then they wouldn't be able to have the records that the department's going to want to see to show that the W-2 is wrong. That's going to be the main answer there. This is why we can't take that from a preparer. Let's see. We do have a question on how is it says, is the penalty based on the 2021 tax liability plus pass-through withholding if all members are out of state and had not elected PT credit for 2021? Craig, do we know what the calculation is? Is it going to work the exact same way as 100% of the prior year, 90% of the current? Or do we?
It's 90% of the current now.
Okay.
Some of that question I think is still in development. We don't have the instructions completed yet, so I'm going to have to defer that for until those actual forms are completed.
We got a question to e-file an amended Illinois return. How do we get around the need for the federal finalization dates needed? You can't get around those if there was actually a federal change. You do have to wait until the federal change is processed. Keep in mind that the time to file an IL 1040X to amend an individual income tax return, or also for business income taxes, those timeframes are based on the federal finalization dates. Normally, it is an amount of time from the date, at least 4 months from the date of federal finalization. And depending on the federal change, sometimes it is even more than 4 months. The timeframes can be found in the instructions of the respective amended returns. Got a question: as a tax preparer on an IL 1040, do we need a power of attorney to talk to IDOR about the return? Not necessarily. There's a few ways that this can be done. A power of attorney on file is generally going to be good just because it will allow you to call about any years that you want, whether or not you filed them. But you could also be a third-party designee listed on that return, and as long as you can verify security when you call our office, we will be able to speak with you. You could also, if you have your client there with you in the office or on a conference call, and they give us permission and stay on the line, we could have them verify security, and then they could hand the phone over to you. But in general, getting a power of attorney on file is not a bad idea, but it is not a hard requirement. So if you're filing returns for 2022 and you're thinking I might want to call about these, if you put your name on there as the third-party designee as well as the tax preparer. It makes it easy. Can credit for taxes paid to other states be filed electronically? Yes, through the modernized e-file. For 2022, though, that ability is going away on MyTax. It is currently available, though, for 2021 and prior years on MyTax. But 2022 will not have the Schedule CR available. They got a specific question on an account. Again, that's something specific with somebody not hearing back on an amended return, especially if it was mailed a year and a half ago. We'd have to be looking at an account to say anything specific on there.
Yeah, exactly, Peter. A year and a half, I would have expected they'd heard something by now. Perhaps something was mailed to the client and got lost in the mail, or perhaps the client thought it was junk mail and pitched it. But I would have thought they would have heard something by now. That you might want to contact us at one of the phone numbers there for us to look at the account specifically and see what's going on with that particular account.
Yeah, I'd agree on that. Yeah, so again, there's amended return question about what's the penalty if you don't file an amended return and wait for Illinois to send a notice. So if a return is filed, and I mean, there's a lot of potential things here, but let's say that somebody files a return saying they owe money. The Department of Revenue is going to recommend that legally they should work on paying that, get on a payment plan. If they say they owe money, they know they're going to be amending in the future. We don't want it, and we will deny any returns that are filed that are federal changes that the IRS has not accepted. So that's why we cannot tell you to file an Illinois amended return before amending federally. Even if the IRS takes years, they will not be penalized as long as the Illinois amended return is filed and paid within the time frame that's listed in the instructions on the IL 1040X. We got a question on where or who can be contacted regarding river edge and high impact zone sites for sales tax exemptions. That is the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, DCEO. They administer those zones and those sites.
Okay, Peter, thank you very much for going through those questions. And thank you to everybody who took the time out of your day to attend this event. I see roughly 75% of you are still with us after 2 hours, so hopefully that means you found it interesting and that you didn't fall asleep during the presentation. Thank you to our presenters, Dan and Craig and Jane. And thank you, Peter, for answering those questions. And Whitney, thank you very much for putting this event together. As I said in the beginning, this is the first in a quarterly series of outreach events. The next event, next quarter, will be hosted by our Account Processing Administration. Those are the individuals that process the income tax returns and business income tax returns, individual income tax returns, sales tax returns. The following event will be hosted by our Audit Bureau in conjunction with our Informal Conference Board. And then the third quarter event in 2023 will be hosted by our Collections Bureau in conjunction with the Office of Administrative Hearings and Board of Appeals. Then the fourth quarter event next year will once again be hosted by us in the Taxpayer Assistance Division, where we'll keep you updated on any legislative changes that will affect you next year. You will receive a follow-up survey via email, so please take the time to let us know how we did. This is the first quarterly event. We need your feedback. We value your feedback. We're constantly looking for ways to improve. So please let us know what topics you would like us to cover in the future that may have been overlooked this time. Please let us know what aspects of today's presentation can be improved so we can do better next time. So as I mentioned in the beginning, this event was recorded. If there's anyone you believe would have benefited from this event, please let them know that they can check out the recording of this event on our website, which should be posted in the upcoming couple of weeks. So everybody, once again, thank you for attending. Thank you for all the great questions, and I hope everybody has a wonderful day.